Hello, my name is Daniel Bodane. I'm a senior at BYU, Idaho, and I am also a web design and development major. Today I'm going to show you how to build a form with HTML5 and PHP. Now, before we begin, as a quick little tip, whenever you need to move code around and you just need to cut and paste things, remember these shortcuts: Control X or Command X, and Control V and Command V. So what are forms? You'll notice on many sites you are able to either request info, like you see here, or email a comment. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're building a form where you can stick in a name, an email, type a message, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. By the way, this form that you see before you is a website I made for an award-winning video company, Keno Mountain Productions in North Carolina. And this is a website I built for them. So there are 3 steps to build a form. The first is we are going to use HTML to create the text boxes, text areas, radio buttons, anything we need really. And then second, we will stylize it and make it look pretty with CSS. And last, to make the form work and actually email, we're going to use PHP to process whatever the user types in and have it emailed to a designated email address. So here is the form that we're ultimately going to build. Very simple for the purposes of our demo, but it'll help you understand what's going on. All right, let's dissect some of the code. Let's do the first line that you saw earlier. The word post is a PHP way of grabbing whatever the user types in and being able to store it when the user hits the submit button on the form. Action is referring to where the PHP code that we're going to write is going to be placed. Oftentimes on large websites, there's a separate document that's going to house all this PHP. But for us in simple, small websites, frankly, we can just stick this PHP code on the same page as our form. Okay, let's continue dissecting the code. Label is the text that appears next to the text box or whatever element you're creating. Name is useful for CSS and PHP as a way to select it. Placeholder is the text that appears in the text box until the user, types over it. Now, as a word of advice, the text that you use should be indicative and help the user understand how to format whatever they need to type. For example, you see in mine, I put first, last. This helps them know that you just type in your name with your first name and then your last name. Nothing fancy. Required just simply means that the user has to fill this specific thing out. And thanks to HTML5, a user can't submit something that is required until the user types it in correctly. So if they're supposed to type in an email address and they leave out the @gmail.com or whatever, HTML5 will not let them submit the form until they go back and correct it. Now it's time to style our form. This is something you should be very familiar with CSS. There's nothing really new here other than we have some selectors to stylize certain areas of the form. I'm not going to go in too much depth here, but feel free to pause and take a look at this yourself. Okay, with the HTML and CSS complete, it's now time to learn and build the PHP that's going to process all the information and then email that information. There's going to be two little segments of PHP code, so this is going to be the first part. Now, as with anything PHP, you always start it off with open alligator, question mark, PHP, and then you're going to end everything with a question mark and then a closing alligator. Now, I know this is going to appear like gibberish to you, especially if you've never dealt with programming languages before. Don't worry, I'm going to break each line down and tell you what it's doing. So the first line you'll see a $ name. Anytime you have a $ and then text, that's referring to a variable. A variable in programming languages is basically a way to store information. After that, you see $, and then $_post. Basically, what we're doing with this entire line is we're creating a variable that's going to store whatever the user types in for their name. And then the next line with email is doing the same thing, but for the email that the customer is going to type in. And then the next line does the exact same thing with what they're going to type in for their message. And those three lines are basically going to handle all the things the user types in. The next little bit is just going to help us, we who are going to be receiving this email, understand things a little bit better. For example, we're going to create a variable that's just going to store a little bit of text that lets us know where this email is coming from. For example, I can put the name of my site. So when I look at my emails coming in, I can see, oh, here's an email from my site. For the sake of this demonstration, I just put from : text. And you'll notice that that little bit of code is encompassed with the little quote signs, the single quotes. That just means it's a string of text, if you will. And then the next line, we're going to put to. And then here is the email address that you want these emails to be sent to. So for this demonstration, I've put down one of my email addresses. Don't spam me, even if you do. This is a site I use specifically for spam and things I don't really care about. All right, next line of code, you'll see $subject. This is just what's going to appear in the subject line of the email. And again, for this demonstration, I just put down testing. And then the very last line of code, I'm just going to combine all of the things we've just did into one little variable. And as we go along, you'll see a \n. \n just basically creates a new line, similar to the line break, the BR in HTML. All right, so that was part one. Now we're going to do the second part of the PHP, the part that will actually send out the email. Here is the block of code. And don't worry, I'm going to go through each section and explain what's going on. So in the first line, you see an if statement. For those unfamiliar with programming languages, an if is just a way to check to make sure something's there. In this scenario, we are making sure the submit button has been checked. So if the submit button is hit by the user, go ahead and execute and do the rest of the code. Now in the next line, you'll see another if statement. Here we're saying if the code sends an email with all of the variables we created, go ahead and display a nice little success message to the user to let them know your email has been sent or everything worked out okay. In this case, the next line that says echo and then paragraph, your message has been sent. Echo is just basically telling it to go ahead and display text. Okay, the next line you see else, and then echo, something went wrong, go back and try again. Here, we're basically telling the PHP, hey, if something does go wrong, the email doesn't send, there was some sort of error, let the user know. Give them an error message. In this case, we're saying something went wrong. Go back and try again. And that's pretty much it. Here is the full HTML and PHP in order from top to bottom, and it then goes into the next column, just so you can see everything. So you would start out with the PHP, and then you'd go and you would build your form. Now, of course, all of this is inside the body tag of your HTML, and you could even put this inside of a div or a section. Okay, let's test this form out and show you that it works. So I'll type in my name, and let's give it an email address. Okay, and let's submit. Oh, right. Well, it knows we didn't finish the email address because it's missing a @gmail.com, for example. Let's go ahead and fix that. Good. It's all right, and then it knows we didn't fill out the message because it's required. We need to fill it out. Let's do some random. Hit submit, and we should receive a nice success message. And there it is, perfect. All right, let's see if it went to my email. And there we go, there it is. You now know how to build a form and make it work. So remember, you start by building the HTML form. You then make it look pretty with CSS, and then you use a little bit of PHP to make it work. One last little caveat is anytime you use PHP in your HTML documents, you need to change that HTML document's extension to PHP. For example, if I'm working on my home page, and normally it's called index.html, all you have to do is change it to index.php. Well, that wraps up this tutorial. Have a great day.